The ultimatum, the day the stars went dark. Captain James Reeves stood on the observation deck of the colony's ship, Aurora's hope, and watched something impossible unfold before his eyes. The stars were disappearing, not fading or dimming, but vanishing completely, as if someone was pulling a black curtain across the universe. He had been making this run between Earth and the Titan colonies for 7 years, and he had never seen anything like it. Captain, you need to see this, his first officer, Lieutenant Chin, called from the bridge. Her voice carried an edge of panic that made James' stomach tighten. Chin never panicked. He sprinted back to the bridge and froze when he saw the main display. The darkness he had witnessed was not empty space, it was ships. Thousands upon thousands of ships, each one massive enough to blot out entire starfields. They stretched across the solar system like a plague of locusts, their hulls absorbing light rather than reflecting it. How many? James asked, though he was not sure he wanted to know the answer. Chen's fingers flew across her console, but the numbers kept climbing. Sensors are still counting, sir. Current estimate is over 6 million vessels, and they're still arriving. 6 million. The entire human fleet consisted of maybe 800 ships, and most of those were transports and mining vessels, not warships. This was not an invasion force. This was annihilation. The message that changed everything. The transmission came exactly 1 hour after the first ships appeared. Every screen on every human vessel, station, and settlement simultaneously displayed the same image. A creature stood before them, tall and skeletal, with skin that looked like polished obsidian. Its eyes glowed with a sickly yellow light, and when it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. Primitive beings of the third planet, it said, without emotion. I am Supreme Commander Valtrix of the Kreth Collective. For 8,000 years, we have maintained order in this galaxy. We have brought civilization to 247 species. We have crushed 17 civilizations that refused to accept their place in the natural order. The creature paused, letting its words sink in. You call yourselves humanity. You have crawled from your small world and infected 3 nearby moons with your presence. You build machines and believe this makes you special. It does not. You are children playing with toys. You do not understand. James felt anger rising in his chest, but he forced himself to keep watching. Valtrix continued, its voice growing colder. The Krethon Collective offers you one opportunity for survival. Surrender your military vessels, dismantle your orbital defenses, submit your population for genetic cataloging and labor assignment. You will serve the collective. Your resources will fuel our expansion. Your people will build our monuments. Your brightest minds will solve our problems. In return, we will allow a portion of your species to continue existing. The alien leaned closer to the camera, and James could see dozens of sharp teeth in its mouth. Refuse, and we will demonstrate why resistance is futile. We will select one of your colonies. We will reduce it to atoms. Then we will ask again. If you refuse a second time, we will select another colony. We will continue this process until you accept the inevitable, or until there are no more colonies to destroy. You have 12 hours to decide. Choose wisely. The transmission ended, leaving every human in the solar system staring at blank screens in stunned silence. James looked at his crew. They were scared, Angry, confused, you felt the same. Way, get me a line to Earth Command, he said quietly, and prepare the ship. For combat maneuvers. Chin looked at him with wide eyes. Sir, we're a colony. Transport, we have no weapons. James smiled grimly. Then we'll improvise. The council of desperate choices on Earth in the underground command center. Beneath Geneva, the United Defense Council gathered for an emergency session. President Marcus Akinquo of the African Union took his seat at the circular table and looked at the faces around him. These were the most powerful people in human civilization, leaders who commanded armies and economies. Right now they all looked terrified. Admiral Sarah Brennan of the Terran Fleet spoke first. The math is simple. We have no chance of winning a military confrontation. Our most optimistic projections give us a survival time of approximately 4 hours if they attack with full force. General Louis of the Asian coalition shook his head. So we surrender, we become slaves. My ancestors fought for centuries to be free. I will not be the generation that throws that away. Your ancestors did not face 6 million warships. President Akono said quietly, we must consider the survival of our species. Pride means nothing if humanity is extinct. The argument raged for hours, voices rising and falling as different factions proposed different solutions. Some wanted to surrender immediately, others wanted to fight to the last ship. A few suggested trying to negotiate better terms. None of them had any good answers. Then the door to the council chamber opened and a woman walked in. Without being announced, she was small and thin with dark skin and gray streaked black hair pulled back in a tight bun. Dr. Amara Singh looked like she had not slept in days. Her lab coat was wrinkled and stained with coffee. Dr. Singh, President Akinquo said with surprise, this is a closed session. How did you get past security? I walked through them, Amara said. Simply, they tried to stop me, but I knew they would move left before they did. It was easy to avoid them, she said. A data tablet on the table. I need to show you something I discovered 3 days ago that changes everything. Admiral Brennan frowned. Doctor, we are in the middle of an existential crisis. Unless you have a weapon that can destroy 6 million ships, this is not the time. I do not have weapon, Amara said, but humanity does. We just forgot we had it. The secret in human blood. Amara activated the tablet, and a holographic display appeared above the conference table. It showed a human brain, but the neural pathways were highlighted in colors James had never seen before. For the past decade I have been studying a phenomenon I call void resonance. It is a pattern of neural activity that appears in approximately 0.0001% of the human population. People who experience it report enhanced perception, faster reflexes, and occasionally what appears to be precognition. She zoomed in on a specific region of the brain. I thought it was a mutation, something new. I was wrong. Last week my team was analyzing DNA samples from the Mars dig site, the one where we found those strange crystalline structures. We found genetic markers in those crystals, markers that match human DNA almost perfectly. President Akono leaned forward. You are saying ancient aliens visited Mars? This is hardly news, Doctor. No, Amara said firmly. I am saying ancient humans lived on Mars, or rather our ancestors did. Before they were fully human, she changed the display to show a timeline, stretching back millions of years. Evidence suggests that an advanced civilization existed in this solar system long before recorded history. They were not aliens, they were our predecessors, and they had abilities that we have lost, abilities locked away in our genetic code. General Liu stood up. This is fascinating science fiction. Doctor, but how does it help us now? Amara smiled for the first time since entering the room, because the void resonance is activating all across Earth, all across our colonies. Humans are beginning to experience it. The stress of the Crethon threat is triggering something in our DNA, something that has been dormant for millennia. She pulled up medical reports from hospitals around the world. In the last 6 hours, we have had 17,000 reported cases of spontaneous ability manifestation, people moving faster than should be possible, people knowing things they could not know, people healing from injuries in minutes instead of weeks, and the rate is accelerating. Admiral Brennan studied the data with a skeptical expression. Even if this is real, even if humans are suddenly developing superpowers, what difference does it make? We still do not have enough ships. We do not need more ships. Amara said quietly, we need better pilots, better gunners, better tacticians. If even 1% of humanity experiences a full void resonance awakening, we will have millions of people with enhanced capabilities, people who can process information faster, react quicker, and predict enemy movements before they happen. She looked around the table. The Cethon called us primitives. They think they know what humanity is capable of. They are wrong. They have no idea what we are about to become. Earth's answer, the Council debated through the night as the 12-hour deadline approached. Some members still wanted to surrender, others wanted to fight, but slowly, as more reports came in of humans manifesting extraordinary abilities, the tide shifted. President Akono finally called for a vote. The decision was not unanimous, but it was clear. Earth would not surrender. Admiral Brennan returned to her flagship, the dreadnought Indomitable, and prepared to broadcast humanity's response. She stood on the bridge, surrounded by her crew, many of whom were now experiencing the early stages of void resonance. Her tactical officer could now track 50 targets simultaneously. Her navigator could plot jump coordinates in seconds that normally took minutes. Something was awakening in humanity. This is Admiral Sarah Brennan of the Terran Defense Fleet speaking on behalf of Earth and all human colonies, she said, her voice steady and strong. We have received your ultimatum, Supreme Commander Valtrix. We have considered it carefully. Our answer is no. On his flagship deep in the Cethon fleet, Valtrix felt something he had not felt in decades. Surprise. These primitives were refusing. Earth will not surrender, Admiral Brennan continued. Earth will not submit. Earth will not become your slaves. You call us children, but children grow up. You call us primitives, but we learn quickly. You offer us slavery or death. We choose neither. We choose to fight. Valtrix began to laugh, a harsh sound like grinding metal. Then you choose extinction. All vessels prepare to demonstrate Cethon superiority. Select the colony on Titan. Reduce it to debris. Let these foolish humans watch their people die. But even as he gave the order, Valtrix noticed something strange. His tactical displays were showing anomalies in the human fleet. Ships were moving in patterns that should not be possible. Pilots were dodging targeting locks before weapons were even fired. It was as if they knew what the Crethon were going to do before they did it. "Sir," his sensor officer said nervously, "I am detecting unusual energy signatures from the human vessels. Neural activity levels are off the scale. It is almost like..." The officer trailed off, his eyes widening with recognition. "Almost like what?" Valtryek demanded. The officer looked up with fear in his eyes. "Almost like the ancients, sir, the ones from the forbidden records, the first civilization that ruled this galaxy. Before the great forgetting." Valtryek felt ice forming in his veins. Ancients were a myth, a legend used to scare young Crethon. They could not be real. And even if they had been real, once they were gone, wiped out millennia ago. But as he watched the human ships begin to glow with an eerie black light, as he saw them moving with impossible precision and speed, Supreme Commander Valtryek realized that some legends were true and some nightmares never truly died. They just slept, waiting for the right moment to awaken. The Black Rising had begun. The Black Rising, when humanity remembered. Commander Zara Williams gripped the armrest of her command chair as the destroyer Sentinel shuddered from another near miss. She had been in combat before, fought pirates in the asteroid belt and rogue AI drones near Europa, but this was different. This was impossible. Every instinct she had screamed that her ship should already be destroyed. The Crethon targeting systems were legendary, accurate to within millimeters at 1,000 km, yet somehow she kept dodging. "Evasive pattern Delta 7. She ordered, but even as the words left her mouth, she realized her helmsman was already executing the maneuver. Lieutenant Jackson turned to look at her with wide eyes that glowed faintly with purple light. "I knew you were going to say that, Commander. I felt it before you spoke." Zara opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again because she had known Jackson would say that too. In fact, she could feel the next 3 things he was going to say. The next 5 moves the Crethon cruiser would make, even the exact moment her weapons officer would find the enemy shield weakness. Time seemed to slow down around her. She could see individual particles of debris floating past the view screen. She could hear the heartbeats of every crew member on the bridge, each one beating in a synchronized rhythm that felt ancient and powerful. Her hands moved across her console without conscious thought, inputting commands she had never learned, using tactics from battles she had never fought. The Crethon cruiser fired its main cannon, a weapon that could vaporize a small moon. Zara watched the energy beam crawl toward her ship like a lazy river of light. She had 5 seconds before impact, more than enough time. Helm hard to port 37 degrees. Weapons target their primary reactor housing. Coordinates already on your screen. Engineering redirect all auxiliary power to forward shields on my mark. The orders flowed from her like water, each one perfectly timed. Sentinel twisted in space with grace. That should have been impossible for a ship of its size. The Crethon beam missed by centimeters. Her return fire struck true, punching through the enemy shields and detonating their reactor. The cruiser exploded in a brilliant flash. Zara sat back in her chair, breathing hard. Around her, the bridge crews stared at their stations in Amazement, they had just destroyed a Cthon heavy cruiser, something no human ship had ever accomplished before, and across the solar system, similar miracles were happening as millions of humans experienced the same awakening. The truth unfolds. Back on Earth, Dr. Amara Singh stood in her laboratory, surrounded by holographic displays that showed data streaming in from around the world. The transformation was accelerating faster than she had predicted. What started as isolated cases of enhanced perception had become a global phenomenon. Soldiers could now predict enemy movements with uncanny accuracy. Pilots flew their ships as if they were extensions of their own bodies. Engineers solved problems that had baffled humanity for decades. Her assistant, a young man named David Chin, stumbled into the lab with his nose bleeding. Doctor, something is happening to me. I can see things, feel things. It is like there are voices in my head, but they are not voices, they are memories. Memories from people who lived millions of years ago. Amara grabbed a medical scanner and checked his readings. What she saw made her heart race. David's neural activity had increased by over 3,000%. New pathways were forming in his brain, connections that should not exist. According to modern neuroscience, the void resonance is evolving, she said. Quietly, you are not just gaining enhanced abilities, you are remembering. Your DNA is unlocking genetic memories from our ancestors. David looked at her with eyes that now glowed with the same purple light she had seen in so many others. They were God's doctor, not literally, but they might as well have been. They could move objects with their minds. They could survive in the vacuum of space. They could live for thousands of years, and they ruled this entire galaxy. What happened to them? Amara asked, though part of her already knew the answer. They evolved beyond physical form, David said, his voice taking on a distant quality, as if he was reading from a book only he could see. But before they transcended, they left behind a gift. They seeded their DNA across 1,000 worlds, locked it behind genetic triggers, and waited for the day when their descendants would need the power to defend themselves. Amara felt tears running down her face. The Cthon do not know what they have awakened. David smiled grimly. All they know, that is why they came with 6 million ships. They found records of the ancients and some forgotten archive. They knew Earth was a seed world. They came to destroy us before we could bloom. They are already too late. The Battle of the Void, in orbit around Titan, the Crethon fleet prepared to make an example of humanity's largest colony. Supreme Commander Valtryek had ordered the complete destruction of the settlement, home to 3 million people. 200 Crethon battleships moved into position there, weapons charging for a synchronized bombardment that would crack the moon's surface and boil away its atmosphere. But standing between them and Titan was a single human vessel, the carrier. Defiance hung in space like a defiant spear, its fighter bays open and launching craft at an impossible rate. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge and felt the power flowing through her veins. She was connected now, not just to her ship, but to every pilot, every gunner, every engineer in her fleet. They moved as one mind, one purpose, one unstoppable force. All fighters engage at will, she said calmly. Show them what humanity has become. 300 fighter craft streaked toward the Crethon fleet like angry Hornets, the alien commanders watched them come and prepared to swat them aside. Their point defense systems had never failed before. Nothing as small as a human fighter could penetrate their screening fire. They were wrong. The human pilots flew like demons, weaving through defensive fire with movements that defied physics. They did not just dodge the incoming fire, they knew where it would be before the Crethon gunners even pulled their triggers. Missiles that should have destroyed them passed harmlessly by. Laser beams that should have vaporized them cut through empty space where the fighters had been micros. Seconds on before, Lieutenant Marcus Cole piloted his fighter Phoenix through a storm of fire that would have killed him 100 times over just days ago. But now time seemed to move differently for him. He could see the paths of every projectile, predict every enemy, maneuver and respond before his conscious mind even processed the threat. His targeting computer could not keep up with his reflexes, so he switched to manual and let his instincts guide him. His missiles struck true, punching through the shields of a Cthon battleship and detonating inside its hull. Around him, his squadron mates were performing similar miracles. The Cthon fleet, which had conquered hundreds of worlds, was being torn apart by 300 fighters piloted by humans who had discovered they were so much more than they seemed. On his flagship, Valtrix watched his tactical display. With growing horror, he was losing against an enemy that should have been crushed in minutes. He was actually losing. All ships retreat to secondary positions, he ordered. Launch the Dread Fleet. His officers looked at him with shock. The Dread Fleet was kept in reserve for only the most dangerous threats. Using it here against primitives would be seen as an admission of weakness. Do it now, Valtrix roared. From the depths of the Creon formation, larger ships began to emerge. These were the vessels that had broken civilizations, planet killers equipped with weapons that could sterilize entire worlds. 50 dread ships moved forward, their dark hull seeming to absorb light itself. Each one was 15 km long and carried enough firepower to reduce continent to ash. Captain Rodriguez watched them come and felt no fear. Instead, she felt something else rising within her, something ancient and terrible and beautiful. The Black Rising was not just about enhanced reflexes or predictive abilities. It was about tapping into a power that predated matter itself. All ships, she said, quietly activate void protocols. Across the human fleet, something impossible happened. The ships began to glow with black light that should not exist. Space itself seemed to ripple around them, as if reality was bending to accommodate their presence. The power of the ancient. Dr. Singh watched from Earth as her sensors detected energy signatures that violated every law of physics. She knew the human ships were not just moving through space anymore. They were manipulating it, folding it, bending it to their will. This is what the ancients could do, she whispered. They did not just travel through space. They commanded it. The Crethon Dread Fleet opened fire, unleashing enough destructive energy to obliterate a solar system. Beams of concentrated antimatter missiles carrying singularity warheads and exotic weapons that humanity had no names for, all converged on the human position. Humans did not dodge. They did not need to. Commander Zara Williams stood on the bridge of the Sentinel and raised her hand around her ship. Space twisted and the incoming fire simply ceased to Exist, not destroyed, not deflected. It was as if the weapons had never been fired at all. Impossible, Valtrix breathed as he watched his most powerful weapons vanish into nothingness. Captain Rodriguez smiled. Target the dread fleet. Full weapons release. Show them the price of threatening Earth. The human ships fired and their weapons were different now, enhanced by the same reality warping power that protected them. Each shot carried the force of a collapsing star. Crethon shields that had withstood planetary bombardments shattered like glass. Hulls made from material stronger than diamond melted like ice in the sun. In less than 2 minutes, the Crethon Dread fleet was reduced to expanding clouds of superheated gas and debris. Valtrix stared at his displays in shock. 50 of his most powerful ships, vessels that had brought entire civilizations to their knees, destroyed as if they were nothing more than target drones. Retreat, he said weakly. Signal all ships full retreat. Jump to emergency coordinates. His officers scrambled to comply, but they were too slow. The humans were everywhere now, their ships moving at speeds that should have torn them apart. They appeared inside the Crethon formation behind their lines, positions that should have been impossible to reach, and everywhere they went, Crethon ships died. Lieutenant Jackson piloted the Sentinel directly through a Cethon carrier, his ship phasing through solid matter as if it was not even there. On the other side, the carrier split in half, its structural integrity simply ceasing to exist. Admiral Brennan coordinated the defense of Earth from her flagship, but she barely needed to give orders anymore. Every human captain, every pilot, every crew member knew what needed to be done. They moved with perfect coordination, a symphony of destruction that the Chthon could not counter. The battle lasted 4 more hours. When it ended, the Chthon collective had lost over 2 million ships. The remainder fled into deep space, jumping away in random directions to avoid the terrifying humans who had somehow become demons in the void. A new dawn. 1 week later, the United Defense Council gathered again in Geneva, but the mood was very different now. Where before there had been fear and desperation, now there was cautious hope mixed with awe. President Akinquo addressed the assembly. We have won great victory. The Crethon threat has been neutralized, but we face new questions now. What have we become? What does this mean for humanity's future? Dr. Singh stood to speak. We have only scratched the surface of our potential. The abilities we are manifesting now, the reality manipulation, the enhanced perception, the connection to the quantum foam of space itself, these are just the beginning. As more humans awaken, as we learn to control these powers, we will become something unprecedented in the current galactic order. General Liu raised his hand. What about the other species? The Chthon mentioned they rule over hundreds of worlds. Will they come back? Will others come to test us? Let them come, Admiral Brennan said firmly. We tried to live peacefully among the stars. We asked for nothing but the chance to explore and learn. The Crethon came with threats and ultimatums. They have learned the cost of that arrogance. Any other species that makes the same mistake will learn the same lesson. Captain Rodriguez, who had been invited to attend the council, spoke up. We should not become conquerors. Our ancestors, the ancients, had the power to rule the entire galaxy. They chose instead to transcend, to evolve beyond the need for empire. We should honor that legacy, agreed. President Akinquo said, humanity will defend itself and protect the innocent. But we will not become the new tyrants of the galaxy. We will be better than that. Commander Williams nodded. We should also consider that we are not the only seed world. If the ancients left their legacy on Earth, they may have done the same elsewhere. There could be other species undergoing similar awakenings. We should find them, help them build alliances. The council debated late into the night, planning humanity's future among the stars. But far away in the depths of space, the surviving Crethon ships limped home, carrying a message that would shake the galaxy to its core. Humanity had awakened. The descendants of the ancients had remembered their birthright, and the stars themselves would never be the same again. Epilogue. The message spreads in the Crethon capital. Supreme Commander Valtrix knelt before the High Council and delivered his report. The ancient beings who ruled his species listened in silence as he described the impossible humans, their reality-warping powers, and the devastating defeat of the collective's greatest fleet. When he finished, the eldest counselor spoke. The forbidden prophecy has come to pass. The sleepers have awakened. We must warn the other empires. Will they listen? Another counselor asked. They must, the eldest replied, because if they make the same mistake we did, if they threaten the descendants of the ancients, they will face the same fate. The age of the old empires is ending. A new age is beginning, the age of the Black Rising. Across the galaxy, the message spread. Humanity, the species that had seemed so primitive and weak, had revealed itself to be the inheritors of the greatest power the universe had ever known. Some species prepared for war, determined to crush this threat before it grew stronger. Others prepared to make contact, hoping to forge alliances with the awakened humans. And a few, the wisest among the stars, began to search their own histories and genetic codes, wondering if they too might carry the legacy of the ancients. On Earth, a young girl named Sarah looked up at the night sky and felt something stirring within her. Purple light flickered in her eyes. Somewhere in her DNA, ancient memories began to wake. She smiled and knew with absolute certainty that humanity's greatest adventures were only just beginning. The Black Rising had ignited the stars, and nothing would ever be the same again.